a great awakening. My name is Jeffrey Shaw. I was asked to participate in this project, and it's been some years that I've actually expressed this story. There was a time when, on a Friday night, all the shipping boys would gather down to Breakfast Creek Hotel for a drink, and this particular night I had a lot of drink, and actually when I managed to get home I threw up all the substances of all the different beverages that I had, and I stumbled into the house and went into the master bedroom, and I turned on the portable TV, and the Space Shuttle Challenger was all set ready to go, and I said, oh, the thing's going to blow up. So I went off and had a shower, come back, and sure enough, the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up. I went to bed with a thought, there must be more to life than this. And what responded was, in the morning, the clock radio came on, and there's a song from Mental as Anything. And it's called The Nips Are Getting Bigger, The Brain Cells Are Dying. And that phrase of words just registered with myself, and I gave away alcohol and coffee. Now, no sooner have I gone and done that, all my mates said, oh, you're not going to get anywhere in this industry if you're not participating with the lunches and the dinners. And I said, that's okay, I can take them to breakfast, and that's exactly what I did. What transpired later on, within a very short matter of time, was a voice. And it was one particular night, Sunday night, Monday morning, about 1 o'clock, and the voice came through. I've never heard the voice since. It was a voice that came from within my whole frame of my body, every atom in my body, right from my toes right through the top of my head and right through the fingers. And the voice resonated with the words, "What dost thou ask of me?" Wow, that was quite surreal, but I was conscious enough to get out of bed and go down to the kitchen. And I pulled out a foolscap pad of paper and I wrote down, in a matter of absolute minutes, 178 wishes. And I can tell you that they've all come true. And out of that I realised that mankind only has to ask one wish. But since we've got into this drive-through food mentality, it's not for me to tell you what that wish is. You got to do the work. Yeah? You got to do that internal work. You got to do that personal growth work. You got to step out of the paradigm of what's been put forward through your televisions and magazines and newspapers and peer group pressures. It's a question of you've got to walk your own path. But when you do, you'll be quite surprised just how the universe steps up to give you assistance and help. Okay, what dost thou ask of me? I have to say, shortly afterwards, I was sitting on the back deck, which was facing north, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky, and I had a cup of tea, and I was reading the afternoon's newspaper. And all of a sudden, right before my very eyes, manifested this humongous big cloud. It was 500 foot tall, and you could see straight away the imagery of a character with his arms out right, stretched, looking at you. And it stood there for quite some time. But then directly in front of me turned a cloud, just manifested, and it was almost the shape of Europe. And it just shape-shifted somewhat to show the bear, and then it just went boom, and it just disappeared into a phoenix. Now, to the right came a sequence of clouds. One was a goat, the goat was bucking the lamb was then jumping over a log, and sure enough, there's the lion. No sooner those clouds turn up and portray those pictures, they then disappear and you get blue sky again. Now the 500 foot tall dude was still there, and then he just woof, and then came the 5 men on the horses, the apocalypse, and they were watching. You could see it, plain as day. Now, they disappeared, And the next second this Chinaman turned up, a magnificent, huge Chinaman, brim hat, and he had this humongous big well, plate, I suppose we just call it, humongous big bowl, more like it. And this cloud, I've never seen a cloud do it. Cloud actually walked across the sky from the west to the east. And he just cast out all his seeds as he walked across. Okay, you say clouds, yeah. Well, what's that got to do with it? Well, what I'm about to tell you is something completely different altogether. And no sooner that Chinaman walked across the sky as a cloud, and then it became blue sky once again. These clouds just came and they just portrayed, and then they disappeared. Well, lo and behold, from the west came 2 pinpoints of light. And they got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until they actually physically manifested. And what I saw was 2 humans in physical corporal form. And the guy, as I looked to my left, as I looked to the west, had long blonde hair, and he had white alabaster robes and a yellow sash going right across here, and he had an open book and he had sandals. Nice cheesy smile, Caucasian, white. But then to the right, my right, to this gentleman's left, came a gentleman with olive complexion, black hair, check shirt, corduroy pants, and shoes. And I just, when I saw them and I saw the characters, I just cracked up and I said, "Is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?" Like, I don't know what to say, but they were there. They just turned up, manifested right there. However, okay, to my left again, so the guy who's standing there, the Caucasian guy with the white robes, and to his right, to my left from where I'm looking, manifested the silver light. And the silver light just came and then it started manifesting and then took corporal form, and then it shaped it into a human form. And I stepped back, and I was sitting in my chair, a cup of tea, and I just stepped back. And I looked, and I was looking at me. It was me. But here I am physically sitting in a chair, looking at me, along with these 2 other characters. Okay, now, who do you go and talk to these? It's been over 30 years. This is the first time I've actually put this in documentary evidence to reveal a story that, what do you do? And so my journey has been one of an awakening, of an understanding. And so a book came across my desk, and everybody has books and all that stuff, but there's a book and it's called The Andronicus Tapes. It was written by a guy called Ian Gordon based in Melbourne, and he'd seen this experiment take place in the Middle East with Sir Jonathan Trevelyan and Maria Parayach, I think his name is, Maria Parayach or something like that. My apologies. But these guys did this experiment where they used a Faraday cage, so it protected them from electromagnetic influence, and they had 9 of them in the group. And they travelled around the Middle East bringing in the love and manifesting the physicality of love onto the planet. A bit like someone today asking for a car park. These guys asked for the peace and harmony to come there, and they had to fight this energetic pattern that was existing in the Middle East. And so in there they discovered that there in the galactic world of our cosmos is a group of 9. And the group of 9, the leader was a guy called Andronicus, and they had Calandrus, and they had Clemenceau, and they had a fellow by the name of Aesop from Aesop's Fables. And they came forth and to expound on the fact that the planet here was basically a kindergarten. The souls come here to learn, and they go through their trials and tribulations to learn. And Ian Gordon in Melbourne thought, well, if those guys can do it, being a scientist with a scientific background, you try this experiment, to see if it works. And so he came across a fellow in Melbourne called Fred, and he was a trans medium. He worked at a spiritual church, and he approached Fred, and Fred said he would talk to his guides, and his guides came back a couple of weeks later and said, yeah, we're on for it. So they actually duplicated the same experiment, and they brought through the same characters, and one of them was called David, who was the leader. Oh, they're all leaders, I should remark on that. And so this book came across my desk, and I ended up reading it, and I felt, oh, this is really pretty profound. And so I wrote to him and asked, is anybody in Queensland, particularly in Brisbane, doing it? It was about 9 months later, a letter came, and he explained there was 2 people in Brisbane. They were in Redland Bay, of all places, in Brisbane. And so I drove around to see the first lady, and she wasn't at home. But fate would have it that I actually ended up meeting her niece and her nephew here in Brisbane, and she originally comes from the UK. I found it quite profound that I met her niece in Penzance, and her nephew actually ended up in a choir here in Brisbane. Fate has many changes here, but I never was profoundly connected with that particular lady. What I was connected with was another lady who happened to be based at a golden cockerel farm. It's a big poultry farm, and her husband was the caretaker for all the young chicks when they come through the hatchery. And so I approached him and explained that Ian Gordon had suggested I speak to them, and she turned around and said, I'm sorry, we have a closed group, we can't possibly help you. Okay, so one door closes and you think, where's the next door going to open? So it just so happened that there's a facility in Brisbane called the Relaxation Centre, and they have a thing called the Centre Within course. It's a weekend course, and anyone who's wishes to open themselves up to an understanding of life, the Relaxation Centre is just filled with love, and it comes from a position of love, and you'll notice that whenever you walk into those premises. Anyway, so they had the Centre Within course. It's a weekend course. You bring a plate of food to share, and if you want to repeat the course, it's only 10% of the original cost. So over the period of the weekend there, they explain to you the different energy centres in your body, and they allocate a colour to it, and some people who have moved along this path would call them chakras. And so their system was based on the principle of opening up your imagination. That's the key to this whole awakening, and bringing their power of imagination. So the colour red, a lot of people couldn't visualise the colour red, so they would tell you to see the red fire truck, the red mailbox, and so forth as you went through the colours of the rainbow spectrum. Yeah. And each one of those colours would represent an energy centre in your body, as people would say, the chakras. And so that was a really awe-inspiring weekend, and in there was a notice of a lady doing something completely new called educational kinesiology. Some people call it brain gym. It's where you integrate the right brain, left brain. And so as a result of that, the first 6-week course was going to be on the Monday, so I turned up and did the Monday course, and the lady there, Gillian Buckingham, said, why are you here? And I have to say, I've got no idea. Anyway, it got around a few people, and then all of a sudden this lady, Glenys, said that she was a clairvoyant medium and healer, and I said, excuse me, I've come to meet her. It's just a bit like Ian Gordon saying, I've come to meet Fred, now I've come to meet this woman. And so the response was, yeah, we do meditations, but no, not interested. 3 weeks into the course, Gillian gets me up to do a cross-step exercise where you stand up and you place your hands and you go to the right, to your left knee, and your left hand goes to your right knee. And you do a set of exercises, and it's part of integrating your right brain and left brain. Now, as a result of doing that, she then asks you to stand up there and put your hands out, just like that 500-foot dude in the cloud. And no sooner I'd done that, the energy pumped right through my body, and it actually whacked everybody in the room. It was almost like, as Glenys, she just got out of her chair and said, this is amazing, I've never seen anything like it. It was almost like when you see those guys with their cigars and they go, and you get those big circles of smoke coming out. Well, out of the palms of my hands was all these different circles of energy of different colours coming through the palms of the hands. And so from that moment onwards, she said, come on to my circle. And so for 2 weeks, I went along to do her meditation, and in her meditation, her concept from a spiritual background was to open each energy centre as you progressively go through, and so that you're more open for an understanding of being in tune with creation. Yeah, but it's a bit like the Red Indian who makes a prayer to a tree or an animal to say, yeah, can I have you? So there's a sequence of events here that takes place. And that's part of the story I'm giving you, is part of the awakening, how every step forward brought me in touch with someone else who then brought me to this next part of the story. So here I am, I've completely opened up in the last 2 weeks of going to Glennis's group. And all of a sudden I get this phone call from the lady from the Golden Cockerel poultry farm, and said, would like to come out on the Saturday. And I said to Shirley, I'm very sorry, but I have to go up north, catch up with my mother-in-law. It's a shame about that. Anyway, lo and behold, a big parcel, about that big manila envelope, arrived at my personal home, and it was all their transmissions that they had in their group from all the previous years. So this is a woman who said, no, sorry, you can't come to our group, it's closed. All of a sudden I get a big manila envelope with all their transmissions, all their stories. And so here I am, I'm starting to read it, and it's got a cover note. It said, would you like to come Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock? So I get on the phone and I ring my wife at the time. I said, do you mind if we come back early? And she said, oh yeah, I'm sure we can do that. So you have to understand, we're well north of Brisbane, and we used to have a single road coming back down from the Sunshine Coast to come to Brisbane. Well, we headed off out of Gympie, and we came down through the older part of the north side of Brisbane to get to Barden, have a shower, a change, and then get all the way over to the south side of Mount Cotton. And there's no way you can physically do that. There was an energy that wrapped up the car, and we seemed to have moved through, slipped through, I suppose the best way to say it, through time and space, for us to leave just basically at 12 o'clock in Gympie, for me to be there at 10 to 3 at Mount Cotton. Even with today's dual carriageway freeways and all that stuff, you know, you'd be very hard pressed to do what we just did. Anyway, so I get there, and lo and behold, not only do I meet Shirley's closed group, but there's Glennis, your husband, and another lady who comes from a closed group that I'm not aware of, that Glennis ran during the week. So these three had come, and that's because both groups were told by these galactic council members to come together and invite Jeff. And so it's a Sunday, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and next second there's a guy there. It's like the Spanish Inquisition. This guy's just hammering about all who I am, where I got to this point in life, you know, who says you, so and so. And I'm just saying, mate, I'm just Jeff, mate, you know, hello. And this guy he just pummeled me, like I was kangaroo court, you know. Anyway, what transpired then was, they then said, what would you like to do? And I said, I'd like us to go out to an Aborigine Boer ring and put in a phone call. And they didn't know where the nearest Boer ring was. And so with that, all of a sudden, this humongous big gust of a breeze, in fact a zephyr, just came down from the top of Mount Cotton and just whizzed straight through. It would have been only like 20 foot across, you know, like 6 meters, and just whizzed straight down, and we all got the sign to go back inside. And so we sat in our circle, and anyway, this lady, Shirley, said, oh, Jeff, you ever done meditation before? And I said, I've done 2 weeks with Glennis. Anyway, she then proceeded to do her guided meditation, which really, interesting enough, only went through to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chakras. So her energy awakening got you to basically to your third eye. She never went to the crown or even further afield again. And so we're all locked into this focal point of being locked to here. But because of my awakening with the relaxation center and the center within course, and then along with Glennis, to become more open with your creativity and your creator, I actually physically opened up. Now, no sooner had I opened that up than Shirley then brought through this lady called Caloundris from the group of 9. Yeah. And Caloundris came through and said, we stand aside for the one who is, the one who was, and the one who will be. Please do not touch the medium. Well, Next second, I'm in my seat, just sitting here. Next second, I get thrust back into my seat, move up where hands go right out here like this, and I'm gone. I'm out of my physical body, and now I'm at the banks of the Ithaca Creek at Barden. Now, as I sit there on the banks of the Ithaca Creek, in all the morning glory comes all the birds of creation, and they're all in there. Then these creepy crawly things come out of the ground and they sit beside me. There's all the fish there. And then finally, when I look downstream, comes this really old guy with the beard down to his toes with a staff. And he comes with an elephant and he comes with a tiger. Anyway, when he finally gets up there, I said, "You took your time getting here." And he said, "My son, all you have to do is ask." And I said, "I asked to go to heaven." And he just went, "You have to understand what's happening here. Physically, I'm at Mount Cotton. Etherically, I'm over at Barden at Ithaca Creek." Okay. Here's this gentleman comes through and then peels my etheric form down to the ground. And then when I look down there, it's a skeletal form that's just laid there. And then when I said, "Where's the lamb?" I look up, and on the big deck that we had created was the lamb. Straight there. But that lamb is another story. But I come back to the point that no sooner I seen the lamb, then I then focused back, and then there I was. It was me. I was the one who had all the white wool, and it was me who'd become the lamb. Now, this story I'm just explaining to you took absolute nanoseconds. When I say nanoseconds, it's like next to no time at all. It's like going through a door frame to go from one room to another. That's how quick it was, yeah? But next second, I'm back in my body, and there's 13 people who are all in my face, surrounding me, yeah? And something like 50 minutes has gone in a time and space here in the physical world here, yeah? And so we're talking about time displacement, time slipstreams, yeah? And so the shock from coming back into the physical body was awesome. And the lady who touched me was none other than Shirley, who had actually got the instructions, "Please do not touch the medium," yeah? And that's what actually happened. I got this humongous big shock. And anyway, as a result of that big shock, and a whole energetic pattern of my body had just completely come alive. Every atom in my body was now electric and alive, yeah? And anyway, they went off and got a towel, and they brought the towel, and no sooner they all gone taking their seats, and all of a sudden the energy just came up. And I looked to the lady to my left who came from Glennis's group, and I can actually look right through her whole physical form, her whole structural form, you know. And then I looked at her and I realized, oh, okay. And next second, because of the energy that had been created, the tears came out of my eyes and they fell on her feet. And she had, because I should remark here that everybody had gone and taken their shoes off to sit in this group, you know, so everybody's barefooted. I just want to make that point. So when the water drops came out of my eyes and fell on her feet, the energy had come and swelled right up on me, and I went down on my knees and I went down to her feet, and I actually bathed her feet in my tears and then kissed them. Then I got her left hand, I'll rephrase that. I then placed my right hand on top of her head, and I gave her the spiritual baptism. That's all I could say is the appropriate words for her, and the energy went straight through her. And then I took her left hand and I placed it on top of the gentleman next to her, George. And so I then gave both of them a spiritual blessing using the energy of what I've been receiving, but what had given to Laurel to give it to George. And then I went down and I went and bathed George's feet and kissed his feet. And I proceeded to go around to the circle, giving them a spiritual baptism, but also taking the person on their right, which is my left, and putting their left hand on top of their head, and giving them this double whammy of a spiritual healing and creating this energetic pattern as we created really basically the egg. And that's what it was. We were creating an egg of protection, an egg of love, and an egg of warmth. Now the guy who was hammering me prior to all this with all these bloody questions, and he's giving me this bloody Spanish Inquisition bloody drama, he'd gone and seen what happened, and he'd gone and crawled into the corner of the room there and pulled his feet under his bum, so I couldn't touch him in any shape or form. And yet here I was, filled with just so much overwhelming love and so much energy, that when I went to him, I put my left hand on his head and gave him the spiritual baptism, because I couldn't get the person next to him to put his hand on his head. And so when I gave him the spiritual baptism, I went down and I pulled his feet from under his bum. And then I went down and kissed both feet. And I still got the towel around my neck here, so I could actually work with the feet if I needed to. And I proceeded then to go around the group doing exactly that. And so the thing at the end of the day was, when George had seen this take place, he stepped up and said, "Oh mate, you've been opened up, mate, I've never seen anything like it. We need to sort of close you down." So when George stepped up to go in and come into the energy field, he just had to step back. There's nothing he could do. It was just, that's how, you can't do it, mate. You're now in the presence, and the effect is quite euphoric, and so you don't feel like eating. You're drinking water. As you drink the water's getting spiritualized. It's getting a blessing. So I went home that night, and I hopped into bed, and my wife reached out to touch me, and as she did so, she got an electric shock. And so the energy said, couldn't get anywhere near me. So I got out of bed, and I went into the lounge, and I sat in the lounge chair, and as I shut my eyes, and all of a sudden, there was all these people coming in and talking to you. Now when I say all these people coming in to talk to you, I'm talking about people who have moved from this physical world and have moved across into the etheric world, into the spiritual world, realizing you don't need this corporal physical body. You're now moving back into the essence of who you are, and you're now making your journey as a soul. And there they are, they all come in and talk to me. And I thought, oh bloody hell, this is bullshit, isn't it? So I said, I don't need that. So I shut that off. So my journey is not one of awareness of what actually happens when you pass over. That's not an issue anymore. It's never been an issue since that day. The fact is that the power of imagination, the power of opening up your mind, the power of realizing that if you're only using 6, 9, 10% of your brain, what happens when you start to move into the whole paradox of utilizing your energetic patterns, and you start looking at all the different myths and mythologies and stories there of wayfarers who've made those trips, the avatars of the past, and then you realize that the consciousness that we speak about is a collective consciousness. It just needs one to awaken, and then as one awakens, then it touches someone else, and before you know it, we're all intricately linked to the web of life itself, and it's manifesting in our day-to-day world as a vehicle for us to get information, knowledge, but in reality, there's a cosmic web of thought, and it's the most surreal, most positive awareness that you can access. And so getting back in touch with ourselves as mortal beings, getting in tune with ourselves and having other like-minded people around you are very, very important to have. It's also about raising your own vibration, your own frequency. And there's been scientific aspects that come into our lives, and you'll start to realize that the metaphysical world and the science world are interwoven. It's just that sometimes one comes before the other. And so quite often the metaphysical world will be the wayfarers, the insights, and then the physical world, the scientific world, then catches up with them. And so you need that aspects of bringing the left brain, the right brain, integrating it, opening up your faculties. Individuals like Rudolf Steiner have showed in terms of awakening a child and its process, but we're also seeing a group of individuals who have tended to work on power, and their role seems to be to keep mankind in the constant loop of slavery. Now, slavery can be debt slavery, or they're keeping it in terms of dumping you down, so that you're not getting inspired enough to rise above the molasses. What you're looking for is to have those like-minded people there where you could collectively bring your consciousness, and as a result you can then start to manifest it. So if you're an individual who can manifest a car park, you know you're on the right track. You just now got to awaken your whole consciousness to a whole new form of being empowered. And so the question is, are you positive or are you positively negative? I'll leave that to you.